Vote Rejoin EU.
Vote Rejoin EU.
Well done for coming here. Thank you very much indeed for this attendance. And not only thanking you, but thanking all those who couldn't make it today because we didn't have enough space. We had more people applying than the people that are here. We are not such a small party, but still, of course, in conventional terms, we are a very small party indeed by comparison to the others. But do not let that dishearten you. We may be a small voice, but let's face it, we know from the polls that the majority of the British people are behind us in what we're doing. We know, okay, a slim majority, but nonetheless, millions of people across Britain also want to go back and rejoin the EU. And we are merely the figurehead, the spitz, the peak of that movement to try and make that a reality. And although we are small at the moment, do not be afeared. There were many small movements in the past: women's rights, black rights, immigrant rights, gay rights, transgender rights. They all started with small voices.
And UKIP.
Maybe so. They all started with small voices that grew to become great movements. And that's what we have to do as a group of people here. We have to turn this small voice that we've got into a movement that is actually heard by others, not only inside Britain, but heard across Europe as well. Now, of course, how can we do that, you may ask yourself? Well, I'll go into that in a moment, but we all have to realize that one of the most important things we have to do is to communicate those things that you've heard today. Now, there are many, many reasons why we should rejoin EU, and I'm not going to go over them all because I'm sure you know them, many of them, because you wouldn't be here unless you knew those reasons. So I won't go over those. But what I wanted to make certain that you understood was that we are a very unusual party indeed. Why? Because we come from all across the political spectrum. There are people here from were with Labour, were with Liberal, Conservative, etc., etc. And that makes us fairly unique. And many people would say, well, that's a weakness. But I don't think it is. Diversity is a strength. And because of that diversity, we have had to create something which is entirely new in British politics. We do not have any form of party whip or dogma or any policy that any candidate, any one of you, has to follow, except two principles. One, that we seek to rejoin Europe, obviously, and secondly, that we are against any form of discrimination. That to us, those two principles are to us the key elements. Everything else is up for grabs. We in the party, we have got different ideas about immigration, about the war, about things such as online sales tax, which I actually believe in, but others may not. But it doesn't matter, because each candidate going to his or her election, whether it be council, whether it be regional, whether it be for a general election, may voice their own opinions according to the constituents that they are attempting to represent, because those voices will be different. In the north, there are very different ideas about these issues than there is in the southeast where I come from. Fine. So a candidate in the north is going to be expressing an entirely different policy than I might in the southeast. But that's not a problem. Even if we were to be elected and sit in the same chamber together, it's not a problem. Why? Because we believe that everybody in Parliament, everybody in the council should be representing their constituents, not representing a party dogma decided by some anonymous executive somewhere in wherever it is. So that, to my opinion, is real democracy. We are there to represent the people who elect us, not to represent a party concept. We are individuals, and that is something which politics needs. It's a great strength, and we should make certain that if any of us stand, that that we are making that clear to the electorate. Now, of course, this means that we've got to actually have conviction of what we are going to speak, because without understanding what we are saying to the electorate, we cannot convince them. And of course, there are so many reasons. Each of you will have your principal reason why you want to rejoin the EU. It might be economic. It might be because of the agricultural issues that Liz has so eloquently spoken about earlier. It might be about small businesses, for example, which is very much something I'm involved in. I believe small businesses have suffered enormously with Brexit because of the loss of European workers, which were much easier to obtain than through the visa system that they have to go through at the moment. The increased bureaucracy that every small business has to go through in order to simply export something to a neighbouring country. These are really burdening small businesses, and yet small businesses, do you know, almost half of the actual trade volume that Britain does is contributed by small businesses. 60% of the workforce in Britain work for small businesses. We contribute 25% of the GDP comes from small businesses, and yet they've been completely crucified by Brexit. Further crucified by this government, I dare say as well. But there are other issues as well which might concern you. For example, the social reasons, the loss of opportunity for all of us to go and live, work, and be free to go into Europe. I mean, many of us at my age, we might be wanting to go off and spend some time in the sun and be able to live a bit in Spain or Portugal or somewhere without hassle. Can't do that anymore. You've got to go through an enormous rigmarole now, but it particularly affects the young, because the young want to go and get experience without hassle in European countries. Experience and study potentials for cultural learning, for cultural exchange. All that is denied to them because of Brexit. So, of course, these reasons are all quite known. I'm not saying anything new, but of course you realise that many of those reasons have been answered by a very clever opposition. Those people who played the confidence trick of Brexit, those people who persuaded everybody with, with outright lies, like the bus NHS business, with social media manipulation, which they very cleverly managed to get hold of first, with the denial of votes to expats. More than 1 million people living, British people with British passports living in Europe, were denied the vote. They couldn't participate in a democratic referendum because it was rigged. And that rigging is something which is still not fully admitted by those responsible for it, even though all the candidates that were standing then, we all know what happened. We all know how Brexit has been a disaster. Even that isn't admitted by the present government or any other government. Even they do not accept the statistics which directly prove that this country has lost billions of money in the aftermath of this disastrous decision. Even that isn't fully admitted. So we live in an illusion created by politicians for their own careers. Because now, you see, we have temporary politicians. They're not like the people of the past, like Neville Chamberlain and Winston Churchill, who devoted their lives to politics in order to help their nation. Oh no, these people like Boris Johnson and so forth, they're in it for the short bit. They get their career hoisted in order to go then afterwards and enjoy lucrative CEO contracts, or in Boris Johnson's case, he gets paid hundreds of thousands to go and do a half-hour speech in some debating chamber or after-dinner conference. He's making millions every year on the back of it. And that is the reason why they're doing this, for their own careers, for their own success, their own personal fortunes. and yet no one talks about it. We are not politicians in this party. We are ordinary men and women who are simply wanting to represent other ordinary men and women who are fed up with the way this nation has been sold down the river. And we want to do something about it, and we are not ever going to be politicians in the same way as current politicians are. Now, if you're going to go off and convince others, and that is one of the most important things we have to do, besides one thing, we have to go and convince the youth to come and join us. The average age group of this audience is regrettably closer to me than it is at the other end of the spectrum. And that is something which we have to attend to. Now, what I would ask you to do is to go and speak to your friends, to get through to their children, to get through to your grandchildren, to get them motivated, because young people must be motivated to realise what lies ahead for them. What lies ahead for them at the moment is an appalling situation, which I will go into in a moment, because I want to say, before we move towards that conclusion, is I want to explain a reason which cannot be so easily countered. All those economic reasons, all those social reasons, oh yes, the opposition has got some very clever statistics, some very clever arguments to say that we're wrong. But there's one thing I don't think they can say we're wrong, and that I shall illustrate with a little story. About 35 years ago, I and a university friend, we set out to find lost tribes. We were very interested to find out what was the core of the human soul. Where did we all come from? Why do we function the way we do? So we set out to find people that had never known the West, never known our civilization. It was then very difficult. It's almost impossible today. In fact, with the internet, it is impossible. So we went to the Geographic Society. We looked at maps, not to find maps of what was there, but to find maps of what wasn't there, where there was no knowledge. We found such a hole in northwestern Sumatra. And we went there and we realised that there was this stretch of jungle, 150 kilometres from a town across to the sea, where there were no maps, nobody knew what was there. And we said, right, that's for us, that's where we're going to go. So we were young. We put on our rucksack, well, one rucksack, and we had with us a bit of dried food, a knife, a diving knife from my time in the Navy, and a compass. And we said, well, we'll travel light because that gives us speed. And true, we could walk through the jungle quite fast that way. And we noticed that the orangutans were jumping around the forest and they were laughing their heads off at us. They do actually laugh at you. And then about sort of, sunset, just after sunset, we were still in the jungle. We had nowhere to sleep, nowhere to stay. And we got a bit worried, oh dear. But then a little puff of smoke we could see coming over the top of the forest. And so we said, wow, there's somebody there. And we went and followed the smoke, and there was this little hut where there were 5 or 6 young men, aged between like 15 and 25, whose job it was to collect medicinal plants for their tribe. And they knew every herb that was in the forest. And they gave us, they treated us wonderfully. They looked after us. And when we said that it's time for us to move on, they said, no, you can't go. It's too dangerous, they said. There are tigers out there. There are snakes out there. You've got a diving knife. I'm sorry, but that's not going to stop the tiger from eating your head. So we're not going to let you do that. And you'll have to wait for this trading group that they knew passed through and would take us through to the next settlement. So we did, and we met this trading group. And they were a pretty fearsome bunch of people. I mean, these people had not really known Westerners very much at all. They had a rifle, though. And that rifle was, of course, the great protection that we needed. But we were fearful that they might rob us. Of course, we had cash and stuff like this to look after ourselves in the long run. But we had to gamble. It was either going through the jungle alone and chancing that we knew the way, that we could survive, or teaming up with other people. and saying, okay, well, there's a bit of a risk here. We lose our sovereignty, you could say. But at the same time, it's safer to go through the jungle with others. And we did go through the jungle and we did reach the coast. We had an amazing adventure. But that, of course, is the same situation that Britain has found itself in Europe, hasn't it? And Europe itself, of course, found itself in a jungle after World War II. Europe was faced with the jungle of the mess that World War II left. And what did it do? It teamed up together to create a community. It then teamed up together to make a union. We joined it. We could have all moved forwards together as we did to the coast and find salvation. But we were taken off that coastal road by some people for their own selfish interests. And what you can say to any other people that you are trying to convince to join the EU, you can say to them, look, if you were on the edge of a jungle, what would you do? Would you chance it to go alone through all the tigers, or would you team up with a group of people who knew what they were doing? Of course, you know the answer. And that's the reason to rejoin the EU, isn't it? To be teamed up. Because there is a jungle at the moment, isn't there? We have a jungle of problems. We have existential threats, climate change, environmental decay, uncontrolled climate immigration, because let's face it, a lot of people are moving because of the effects of climate change. Wars, famines, AI, all these, it's an existential threat, I can assure you, if you look at it with any depth. All these threats are like the tigers we face, and there are snakes as well. They're out there. The dictators, you know who they are. They're a threat to us all. And the only way we can reach that coast in safety is to team up, to be unified. We must unify with our neighbours. We must unify with the people who believe, as we do, that European unity is the core of our safety. But most of all, we have to unify with each other, each and every member of the party. Even though we come from different backgrounds, with different political persuasions, it doesn't matter. We're following the same path. And that path is something all of us can help, simply by getting others involved. The most important thing is to speak to other people, and particularly the young. We need young people in this audience. We need young people because they're the future, and they're the people who are going to take over from us and carry on this great mission until we have succeeded. So let's move forwards together and rejoin the EU. Thank you very much.
Vote Rejoin EU. Join the EU vision.